Hello, everybody. This is Guy Cunningham with NetSurian. Thanks for joining our podcast. I am very excited to have Rob Frickel with us today. Rob is a VP of Cybersecurity for Ascend Technologies. Ascend recently merged with Infogressive, which is one of NetSurian's longtime partners, and we're just really happy to have you here, Rob. Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate it. Appreciate being here.
So, Rob, you've been with Infogressive slash Ascend for almost 9 years, 10 years now. Talk to us about what that transition has been like. Merging companies and merging cultures, and how's it been working from Lincoln, Nebraska, where you are, for a company that's headquartered in Chicago.
Yeah. To be honest with you, it's been a lot going through that entire process. Obviously, born and raised in Lincoln, and merging with a company that's out of Chicago that is essentially catty corner to the Sears Tower,
Mm.
Wintrust building, I guess, if you will. It's been a little bit of a difference from a culture standpoint, and getting up to speed. I think with the fact that we're dealing with this pandemic that everybody's dealing with, that has made probably that transition a little bit easier, because everybody's in their basements and their PJs,
Right.
whatnot, working. So that's certainly one thing. But just kind of tailoring our offering, whether it's NetSurian, whether it's another product, to kind of a mid to small enterprise customer, as opposed to some of the SMBs that we were used to dealing, as big
Mhm.
a change and a challenge.
Yeah, I get that. And now you got virtually national scope, correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah. Well, not that Infogressive didn't have national scope, but even more so.
That's correct. Yeah, just more visibility into those larger companies that kind of move the needle a little bit better.
Yeah. So you've been in cybersecurity for 10 years now, and I'm sure that when you talk to your friends and family, they don't have any idea what you really do. So if you had to say what your parents or your close friends would say about what you do, how do you think they would describe it?
Yeah, it kind of depends. I think the parents, a lot of times it's just computers. He works in computers. That's what.
Yeah. My
Uh,
kids say that I'm a computer dude.
there you go. Yeah, there you go. My kids and my friends, Infogressive was a very kind of strong red team kind of presence. We went to DEF CONs, we went to those things. So I'm a hacker to them. That's my
Mm-hmm.
title. So
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting depending on who has their opinions and what they're thinking.
Yeah. So, what do you actually do? VP of cybersecurity. What are you actually doing on a daily basis?
I used to kind of define my job, and it's obviously changed over the years, going up from analyst to director to VP. I used to always define myself as kind of a nerd herder, basically just make sure that our technical folk are focusing on what they need to focus on, as in the SOC, and with the various personalities that we get in a SOC. I think that's a very difficult thing. But really, overall direction, where's our stack and our security going? How is that being developed? And then what are the individual processes of how our personnel interact with the technologies that we have, is
Mhm.
my primary duties.
Yeah, with cybersecurity, the process side is as important as the technology side, I think.
100%. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned the various personalities that you get in a SOC. So, there's this picture of everybody in a hoodie, hunched over a keyboard in a dark room, staring at multiple monitors. What's your SOC actually look like, and what kind of people do you have there?
Well, somewhat accurate, right? I think it's just like anything else. It's made up with a lot of different personalities and people. We certainly have your stereotypical tatted up, hoodie wearing security nerds on our team. But we also have a wide demographic of people, especially with the Ascend merger. It's a very diverse company, and people come from a lot of diverse backgrounds. In this day and age, we really still, I mean, we're getting better, and we're getting better at preparing people to go into security, but usually people are coming from many different things. Either they're admins in their networks or their network guys or something along those lines that have been converted at some point or another into security, and they bring that with them. So very diverse is what I would say. Not necessarily all guys, that only use their Linux computers and don't come out of their basements.
So it sounds to me like y'all have at least some sort of a plan to address the what I'm calling the negative unemployment. The gap between the number of positions that are out there for cybersecurity jobs and the number of people that are actually there to be able to fulfill them. Talk a little bit about that. You said you're bringing people in from general admin kind of roles, et cetera. What are you guys looking for when you're trying to fill seats?
Yeah. So we're real lucky in Lincoln to be situated, between a university and a lot of kind of trade schools and things along those lines that at least give you the base kind of knowledge that you would need to get into the field. In addition to that, Ascend Technologies has a full-blown MSP business as well to kind of feed analysts into. So
There you go.
if we have a particular personnel that has a real interest or a passion in cybersecurity, we do look to move those people appropriately. And to be honest, that's probably what we look at. Number one is
Growth from
somebody.
within.
Yep, and is somebody really interested in this? Is this what turns them on? Is this something that excites them and wants to move their role forward? Because you tend to get that a lot in the infosec world. Is somebody that's really passionate about what they do. And that's the number one marker for success.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think you're right. I've been selling technology for over 20 years now. And at least in the sales and even in the sales engineering side of things, people tend to jump from technology to technology. Um, Not so much hardware to software, but within the software space, you might be selling business applications or infrastructure applications, you know, at multiple points along your career. But within InfoSec, there tends to be people that stay in InfoSec. They don't jump outside of that to other parts of the technology space.
Yep. No, I would 100% agree.
So before we jump into more of the meat of the conversation, tell us a little bit about something that is not going to show up on your bio, something unique about Rob that maybe most people don't know.
Putting me on the spot. I think the number one thing that is somewhat surprising to people is that I am actually an identical twin. So
Oh, wow.
yeah. So my brother Jeff actually works at Ascend with me, and has a technical role as well. But that is definitely something that catches people off guard quite often. You know, I get things like, "I thought your name was Rob," or "Weren't you on this call with me?" or something along those lines. So that's
Hmm.
definitely something that jumps out.
Oh, that's cool. I actually have identical twin daughters.
Nice,
So
nice.
I kind of sort of understand part of what you might have experienced growing up.
Yeah,
Um, so it's
matching jumpers, matching sweaters, and the whole 9 yards.
yeah, we get all kinds of questions like who's the dominant one, whose personality is different, and for my girls at least, they complement each other really well. They're almost two sides of the same coin as opposed to being two separate coins. They're not the same people as but they do have a lot of things that are similar. There's a lot of interests and a lot of personality traits that are similar, but a lot that are different.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as you know, NetSurian is a cybersecurity company, so we're going to have to talk about that. And one of the ways I'd like to jump into that is Infogressive and now Ascend is a cybersecurity company too. So and Ascend does some things that are different than what we do. I mean, you have services and capabilities that are above and beyond what NetSurian focuses on. So give us kind of the general approach that you take when you're talking with your customers about cybersecurity. What are the key things that you want to get across to the end user companies or your customers that you feel are most important for them to pay attention to when making decisions around cybersecurity?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, a really good point and something that we try to focus on all the time. I think the number one thing that I try to talk about is a fluid story of security, or how well does the different aspects of the services or offerings or technology that we bring to the table, how well does it work with one another? And then, conversely, how can I demonstrate that to the customer in a console or a report or some kind of QBR that kind of generates that and shows that interconnectivity.
So, one of the ways that I've heard cybersecurity described, at least from an operator's perspective, is a lot of swivel chair. You got multiple consoles and multiple screens that you have to pay attention to. Um, and as a vendor, we hear a lot about how can you help me show to my customer what I'm doing?
Mm-hmm.
And so that what you just talked about is being able to show that customer how it all ties together, I think is really important. Are you doing that through a portal that your customers have access to, or is that more through, regular reviews and conversations and maybe reports?
Yeah, I think right now it's a combination of both. Like most providers out there on the market, we are investing heavily in development and database administration and things like that on the back end to provide a better, more fluid experience. But we use things like let's take NetShurian for example, in the Event Tracker console. We do have the ability to share our dashboards with our clientele, and then we have the ability to import our security stack via KPs to demonstrate that to the customer. So that would be a portal and a way for us to basically ingest an entire environment's alerts with one tool, with one dashboard, with one alerting process.
So I'm sure most of your customers are not anywhere near as well versed around cybersecurity as you or anybody, the team there at Ascend. But as you're helping them evaluate their budget, how they allocate their budget, um, there's probably you have to do these things first, and then you get down the line, and then these are the nice to haves, the should haves, the necessaries. How do you stratify um, technologies or products from a budgetary perspective when you're talking with customers?
Yeah. Good question that comes up quite often. I mean, we do offer a wide variety of services, and it's only expanding as we move forward. But I think the key here is always you got to focus on what's going to do the most good for you. Like if you think of security as a funnel, there's certain aspects of it that are going to do a much better job, at least providing you to a baseline point. And once you get those technologies in place, you can start moving from the essential security items to the nice to haves, or the wish list type items that you would have down the road.
What would you consider fundamentals, and then categories of products, not necessarily vendor names,
Yeah.
versus nice to haves?
Yeah.
If
So
somebody had an unlimited budget.
right, yeah, I think it still starts with the preventative technologies that you can get out there, right? You got to have a nice firewall. You got to have an endpoint security agent that doesn't suck. You got to get those things in place, and they have to have coverage in the environment. If you don't have any of that stuff, you can't even have the conversation. And then once you have those building blocks, you can start looking into, okay, well, here's the use cases that I'm concerned about, and how can I find that with like an MDR piece or an EDR piece or XDR or whatever they're calling it any more on that front. I think the preventative piece is key in the beginning. So,
Mhm.
look at things like how can I filter out bad email? How can I stop, malicious traffic from entering my environment? Those are the items that need to happen first, and then you set up your response net to catch the things that would somehow circumvent those security controls that you have in place.
Yeah, so you mentioned a couple of things there. So the first thing I want to drill into is EDR versus MDR versus XDR. How does Ascend, or maybe various people within Ascend, how do you differentiate between an EDR solution, an MDR solution, and whatever other DRs there are?
Yeah. Well,
With
I
with
mean,
for those of you that are listening, the EDR is endpoint detection and response, MDR is managed detection and response, and XDR is whatever as detection and response. So
yeah,
obviously they're all detection and response, but what's the difference?
The first thing you got to do is kind of break those Gartnerisms a little bit and just understand what are you actually trying to protect against. And even that, how is your environment construed? So one of those pieces might be like an IDS sensor that does packet captures and stuff along those lines in line on the switches. Well, in our world today, a lot of those products have become useless, weights on the server cabinet because nobody's in the typical environment anymore. So in that sense you'd want to shift over towards like an EDR product or something like that that's off net to kind of provide that protection. I think what Ascend does is we view the whole process more holistically, and we're looking at what makes up managed detection and response. And I think a part of that is all of the other terms that we talked about, from endpoint to network spans and taps, packet captures, those types of things, all the way to your SIM and how you're utilizing that.
I've heard, being in this space for a long time, I've heard a lot about defense in depth.
Mm-hmm.
And from my perspective as a salesperson, that sounds like layering multiple technologies at any point in the network, having multiple technologies in place because they all do certain things. Um, how do you view, or what's your thought process around leveraging defense in depth, not just in the core part of the network, but since statistics say 70% of breaches happen at the endpoint, where most organizations just have an endpoint protection agent, they don't have much of a defense in depth strategy. What's your thinking around that?
Yeah, yeah. You really can't get away anymore with just having, hey, here's that endpoint virus protection that's going to do something for me. One, with the sophisticated kind of targeted malware that we see nowadays with the ransomware campaigns and things along those lines, they're very difficult to stop in a traditional means. And certainly there's no, I don't know, they call it silver bullet, or, there's no
Mm-hmm.
one answer there. But the question really is what if something isn't malicious on that endpoint?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say somebody got legitimately onto a machine with credentials from a VPN, or some kind of proxy or Citrix type environment. What is your endpoint protection really going to do for you in that case? It's going to do absolutely nothing. So you've got to have a different way to look at it. And, that's where EDR and, some of these other responsive technologies looking for behavioral type information are really coming into play. And I think that really does a good job. I mean, Defense to Death, when us first coming in and working up, it was basically like, oh, I've got to have a network AV and I've got to have an endpoint AV, and that's really important. And it's really kind of shifted to, how do I look at the same problem from multiple different angles, and do I have those covered?
Yeah, I'm sure you're really familiar with the MITRE attack framework, and I hear um, a wide variety of vendors in the cybersecurity space referencing MITRE attack. But when we have conversations with our partners, and these are like mature partners, the struggle with that is not acknowledging that attackers' tactics and techniques common knowledge database is accurate or valuable. It's how do you implement that into some sort of process without the help of a vendor who's done the heavy lifting and automation for you. Um, how does Infogressive implement or take advantage of that attack framework, or does it? Or are you just relying upon the vendors to implement that at the tool set level?
Yeah, I think there's the ideal world and the research world that we do, and then there's the actual productization of it. We
Mm-hmm.
certainly have a lot of vendor technology that's in place to help us with that and showcase what we're doing, and what we're vulnerable or not vulnerable about. Internally, though, we do have a segment of our SOC that, I mean, we label it detection engineering. This can be labeled a lot of different things that are out there, but we are running things like benchmarks and running things through. Okay, this APT attacks this way. how would we protect against those types of things based on the vertical or the size or, why a particular customer would be targeted. So I think it's very useful for us in that manner, as far as there's a million things to look for from an attack perspective. And if I get a
Right.
roadmap showing me how the most common attacks are perpetrated and how I can stop them, I'm gonna use that, and I'm gonna use that to my advantage.
Yeah, again, I keep referencing that I'm in sales. I'm not a practitioner, but as I look at the MITRE ATT&CK framework, if you think about the various combinations of ways that an attacker could make their way from the left side of the of that um, the tactics and techniques paradigm all the way to the exfiltration, the right side, the various combinations are too numerous to try and manage as an individual, and frankly, in my mind, probably too numerous to try and program a machine learning algorithm to catch every single possible combination. Um, so what we've done is we've tried to make it simple. We capture visually each of those tactics and techniques, and we can show you how many are active at any one point in time on a single asset or a group of assets. But then still, you have to go in. You have to decide, is it actually malicious or not?
Right.
From our perspective, if your technology is throwing an alert, sending an event to a dashboard, it's easy to know that you need to respond. It's being able to determine when something is leading up to an event or leading up to an alert, but hasn't generated one yet. That's where I think the next threshold is going to be. That's going to be part of that preventative effort to stop attacks before they get there, not just respond to them, detect them, and respond to them, but prevent them from happening in the first place.
Yeah, yeah, I I agree. And so some kind of learning mechanism to, state, this is what we saw and this is what we're seeing, and now
Hmm.
we're going to put a block on this because it's outside of your baseline or your norm.
Right.
Um, I'd agree.
Yeah. So um, obviously you're representing a lot of different technologies into your customer base, and I want to delve a little bit into your perspective on partnerships. NetSuring is a partner heavy organization. We rely upon our partners. You as the managed services provider, the MSSP, rely upon your technology partners. What kinds of things do you see that really work in that partner ecosystem, and what maybe give us some examples of things that you've seen vendors try to do that maybe don't work that well?
Yeah. So the number one key thing for us, as you mentioned, we're kind of in the same space where we don't only, support clients directly. We support through our vendor, through our other MSPs, and we help them as well. Very similar use case here. But what works for us when we're looking at a partner is we got to have that true federation piece. We've got to have that true multi-tenant console. We got to have, API access into things, and we have to be able to manipulate it from that perspective, or it becomes really, really heavy and burdensome on our team. Especially when you're looking at, we talked earlier about processes and how we do that is almost as important as the technology. And I can't emphasize that enough. You need a partner that is going to have the flexibility to, help you create the ecosystem that you need, so that you can get down to the security aspect. And if you're messing around with a lot of different bells and whistles and you just can't get there because the platform is not designed the way it needs to be, it is the difficult thing to work through.
So any examples of, not again, not names, but situations with partners that you've seen not live up to the potential?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's that nesting structure or the RBAC that is built into most of these cloud consoles or things along those lines. So, you know, if I'm going into a product and it's built for one entity and we're doing makeshift kind of tagging approaches or ways along those lines to try to break them up into smaller chunks that are and then manage them that way, it causes issues and it causes things. And too far the other way as well. If we segment too many aspects of a particular console to where I don't have one-to-many gains that I could do there,
Mhm.
it becomes, again, not really an ideal fit for us. So, a company that has a real feel for the market and understands what we're looking for is an important aspect that we look for to partner with vendors.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. You've got to, the tool has to be efficient for your team to use, no doubt about it. So let's start looking ahead, right? We talked about, current state of technologies and how customers decide to spend dollars and how you present it and help them make those decisions and how you're managing those technologies. What is the biggest area of your role that allows you to be curious? What are you thinking about in the future?
Yeah, most of our future, and what we're looking at there is, I mean, there's different spaces. We're certainly looking at finding ways to better control the credentials of the user. I think that's a huge step, especially from a managed servers perspective, that not a lot of people do very well or do right. And that would be, across the entire realm of how to manage and control those particular usernames, admin users, those types of things that we're looking for. So from a technology standpoint, I think that's what's on the horizon for us, is to find a way to incorporate that more into our stack and how we provide security to our customers. As far as just an aspect of the job, it's automation. That's the number one thing that we're looking to do, is to find smart and efficient ways to, whether it's display the data to our customers or to work through the things that our SOC analysts don't need to be doing. If we can automate, 50 tasks that they're doing on an everyday basis, it lets them focus on the true breaches and really understanding, the alerts that matter.
And going back to the credentials comment, you know, I've heard about SSO for a long time. I've heard about OAuth. Obviously, as you add in MFA into that as well, it adds some complexities. Are you seeing that there are any good solutions out there, or do you feel like that's something that the marketplace still hasn't really solved yet?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great solutions out there. There's stuff in that space that is very effective. The question is price point, and is it something that we can bring down to the managed services or even into a small enterprise environment or SMB even? How do we operate and get that to that point? And then is it structured in a way that's conducive to that? Meaning, is it functional from a channel
Mm.
perspective? Is it functional from an MSP perspective? I think that space is behind a little bit in that front.
Yeah, I think a lot of the dollars in that space have been targeted towards the enterprise, where it's one environment per se, and the multi-tenant, multi-customer, multi-layered kind of requirements that you're experiencing on a day-to-day basis are admittedly hard to solve for.
They are.
So
Yeah.
I could see that. What other spot of cybersecurity do you feel like is underserved with the solutions out there? And maybe it's because something's coming down the road that you're seeing, or where do you see an opportunity for cybersecurity vendors and practitioners to build something that maybe isn't out there yet, or isn't out there in a form factor that is as good as it needs to be?
Yeah, the user analytics piece, or understanding what the normal behavior of a particular user and how that is mapped and monitored via security software, whether it's a machine learning model or something along those lines. I think that's a space that needs to continue to develop, and we need to see if that's something that can really change how we focus on things. There's been a lot of attempts to kind of get there and work through that kind of stuff, but you know, I wouldn't say it's always been met with a whole lot of success. And I wonder if, with today's technologies and the minds that we have, if we put to work on that, if that might be an area that could get better. And then, really just that breaking down those big data and understanding
Mhm.
and getting to the core of what you're trying to look at. You know, if a company could get all of that right, I think that that is, kind of the key here. We just have so much noise, so many logs, so many
Yeah.
different tools, so many different things that we're looking at, and finding a more simplistic way to break that data down and get it actionable. Um,
Well, there you go. You've identified your business plan for
there we
your
go.
next
Yeah.
startup, right? So this has been a really good conversation. I appreciate that. You've got some really cool insights into the space that we operate in every day. What should I have asked you that I didn't? If you had to step in my shoes as kind of the
And
person throwing questions across the fence, what would you have liked for me to ask that I didn't?
I, I don't know, man. I think you did a very good job, guy. It's comfortable with the questions. I think you covered the bases.
All right. Well, so tell us a little bit how our listeners can get in touch with you or get in touch with Infogressive slash Ascend.
Yeah,
I keep
absolutely.
saying Infogressive. I'm sorry.
Fair enough. You can still get to infogressive.com. But
Okay.
I think teamascend.com is the best way to get in touch with us, see our product stack, see what we offer. Um, Coming from only an MSSP model and what we did at Infogressive, it's really, really exciting to reach out to our partners, our networks, our customers, and showcase, what we can do now that we're Ascent. And that's, cloud app computing, that is full-blown managed infrastructure, that's looking to secure your apps and your business things, that is everything that you're using to run your business today. We want to be able to help secure it. And that's what this merger has done for us from a security standpoint. It just opened the ability to really interact and get to what we need, with some substantial more resources on that side.
Yeah, it sounds like not only have you added more depth to your bench, but you've opened up the ability to work in a couple of different additional silos. The cloud infrastructure and the application security, et cetera. So that's pretty interesting. That's compelling. That'll certainly help you guys as you focus on that mid-enterprise kind of customer. They're looking for somebody like that is not just a point solution or focus on a part of their infrastructure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, that's exciting. I'm excited for y'all. I'm excited for what 2021 holds for Team Ascend and for our partnership. And um, I appreciate you spending the time with me today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we will sign off. That's Rob Frickel, VP of Cybersecurity for Team Ascend, talking to us from Lincoln, Nebraska, the middle of America, probably where it's really, really cold right now.
About 9 degrees. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.